broker dealers play an incredibly important, ethical, valid role to create and deliver products, right? You need that. There also needs to be a place for the do-it-yourselfers, right? If you're a do-it-yourselfer, right, you don't need to pay an advisor. If you're competent enough and willing to take the time to do your own financial planning, it's doable, right? It really is. In which case, you want a broker dealer to execute your trades. In that case, you are the advisor, right? And that's why broker dealers will always be around. There's a need for that. But what we're going to see is a clearer delineation between advice and sales.
Welcome to Mitlin Money Mindset, your weekly dose of inspiration and insights to ensure you enjoy each step of your journey. Whether you're saving for the future, planning your next big adventure, or simply looking to add more joy to your life, you've come to the right place. Now, let's dive in.
I'm Larry Sprung, your host for the Mitlin Money Mindset and founder and wealth advisor of Mitlin Financial. Today's guest is Chuck Failla, host of the goRIA podcast and the founder and CEO of Sovereign Financial Group. Chuck Failla is a seasoned financial professional with a wealth of experience in the investment advisory space. As the founder and CEO of Sovereign Financial Group, Chuck plays a pivotal role in empowering independent advisors to build and grow their practices with confidence and success. His deep understanding of the financial industry, combined with his strategic vision, has made him a respected leader and mentor to many. In addition to his leadership at Sovereign Financial Group, Chuck is the host of the goRIA podcast, a popular podcast where he shares his experience and interviews industry leaders on the challenges and opportunities facing registered investment advisors. Through his podcast, Chuck provides valuable insights and practical advice that can help RIAs navigate the complexities of the financial world and achieve their business goals. Join us as we dive into Chuck's impressive career, explore the trends and strategies that are shaping the future of the investment advisory industry, and learn how his work is helping advisors thrive in an ever evolving landscape. Well, I am super excited today to have Chuck Failla, host of the goRIA podcast, as well as the founder and CEO of Sovereign Financial Group. Welcome to the show, Chuck.
Larry, thanks so much for having me here. I've been really looking forward to doing this with you.
I am as well, and I like. I'm really fascinated with the entrepreneurial journey, and I think that I've been pretty open as to that's one of the reasons why I enjoy this show is just meeting entrepreneurs, meeting different business people, and understanding their entrepreneurial journeys. So we'll talk a lot about what you're doing today with goRIA and Sovereign Financial Group, but for our listeners, can you give a little background about who Chuck is? Like, what brought you up to the point of being an entrepreneur? What led you in that direction?
I consider myself a very fortunate person, and I'm a very grateful person. And the best thing that happened for me, and this is just pure luck, is that from a very, very strangely young age, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Like I'm talking single digit, like 8 or 9 years old, which is fortunate. A lot of kids that age, they want to be a rock star or a sports star. And I wasn't gifted musically or athletically, so it worked out really well that I really wanted to be an entrepreneur, because that was right in my wheelhouse. And, when you have that gift, and that's the gift of knowing what you want at a really early age, what that allows you to do is every decision I made through junior high school internships and high school and college, every decision I made led me to opening up my own business. And that's really because I knew I wanted that from a very early age, which is a gift. That's not something you can do, something actually I tell my kids to focus on, right? One of the hardest
Mhm.
things in the world to do is figure out what do you really want to do, what makes you really happy, or to use your brand, what brings you joy. And I think it's easy to go after your joy or your happiness, but I think for a lot of folks it's hard to figure out, well, what is it that really makes me happy? But once you do, and I did, fortunately, at a very early age, which is to run a business. I couldn't care less, frankly, if it was a gas station or a manufacturing plant or an RIA. I just wanted my own business. And having that gift at an early age allowed me to make decisions throughout my life to bring me to where I am today.
And were there other family members that you kinda looked up to and followed that were entrepreneurs, or are you, as they say, a first generation?
First generation, and interesting. And I think if we're going to play, Monday morning psychologist. So my father was in the Merchant Marines, which meant he was away for months at a time. Like he was on those big oil tankers. And I really haven't shared this story too much, but it's a true story. So, as a kid, you want your dad around, and he was away a lot, like for a couple months at a time. And this is before the internet. So maybe once a week I would get one of those ship to shore calls where it's like
Right.
talking on a CB with your dad for about 5 minutes. And I have to believe that played a part of that because I wanted something where I had full control over my time, which he really didn't, right? He certainly wanted to be around, but his career led him to sea. Um, and the way you can have most control over your time is to have your own business, as you all know. Now that means, you're still fitting in a lot of hours, usually way more than 40, right?
Mhm.
Maybe 60, maybe 80. In my early years, I mean, it was way over 80 hours a week. But you could choose those 80 hours, right? So that means if you want to go to that baseball game or that dance recital, you can. But also means you're doing some work on a Sunday, which I have no problem doing. But having control over my time has been the biggest gift, and achieving that by being an entrepreneur has been the best.
Amazing. You know, before we go into a lot of what you're doing today, and I should say that this leads into where you are today. I heard that you too, like me, lived the Wolf of Wall Street life before where you are today. And I've spoken very openly about my experiences, and when people ask me, "Is that really what it was like?" I'd say the movie might have even been a little tamer than it actually was at that time. But,
Mhm.
what did that whole experience teach you?
Yeah. So it was more tamely portrayed in that movie, right? I remember watching that movie when it was on, I don't know, whatever, watch at home venue. And my wife was down the hall in the home office, and I'm watching this movie screaming, "That happened, that happened." I was like, "People are not gonna believe this, but this is exactly what happened, if not perhaps more over the top." And my story was similar even to that character, when he approached, DiCaprio, right, who was playing Belfort, saying, show me that check, and I'll quit my job, and I'll come work with you." Almost exactly that, frankly, is what happened with me. So when I came out of college, I went to the University of Connecticut. I went into the field of professional fundraising, which is what I did when I was in college, right, as a student fundraiser. And I quickly went through the ranks or rose up through the ranks. And some of my clients included the Metropolitan Opera, the Wharton School of Business, Chicago Botanic Garden. I was doing okay. But I always had in the back of my mind, I need to figure out a way to start my own business. And I was going to start my own fundraising consulting firm, frankly. But then a buddy of mine who I trained in fundraising went on to Lehman Brothers, the famous, if not the infamous 55 Water Street branch, right? Which was the birthplace of cold calling, really, back in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And he was telling me, I'm making a good amount of money. So it wasn't only for the money, but I actually saw a pathway to use this to start my own business. So I went into Wall Street very specifically to learn the business, bank some money. And as soon as I had enough money in the bank, after about 4 or 5 years, I quit cold turkey, the cold calling and the selling of individual stocks, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not a very inefficient way to build a portfolio.
Okay. Yeah.
And I went cold turkey from commission to fee based, almost completely fee only in 1999. Not one client followed me because these were all stock jockey type clients. All they wanted to know was what's the stock? What's the stock? What's the stock? I was like, well, I'm a CFP now. We're going to do portfolio theory and so on and so forth, financial planning, no interest. So I started from scratch. But it was really that pathway, where the Wolf of Wall Street and I diverged as I went on to fee base and they went on to some pretty bad things. But it was an interesting way to learn how people think about money.
Right.
And what was really wrong about that model is not so much commission, right? As much as as investment news called me the broker dealer's public enemy number one.
Right.
I am not anti-broker dealer. I think broker dealers are a great solution for product delivery. They're a horrible solution, in my opinion, for advice delivery because there's a difference. So when I was cold calling, three, 400 dials a day, selling an individual stock, these are stocks that I researched, I believed in, and I was recommending to these clients. But the client in that scenario really is the portfolio manager because I wasn't that client's sole broker. That client usually had 10, 12 different brokers. So that client was putting together his or her, usually his portfolio based on me and 12 other brokers. Completely inefficient, completely
Right.
inefficient. And that's
Right.
when I realized this is a better way to go. Then I left, went to the Raymond James independent broker dealer side and started my entrepreneurial phase in 1999. And then that evolved ultimately to dropping my 7 and 24 into pure RIA where I am today.
Yeah. I listen, I had similar experiences. There were takeaways from that whole experience that I still carry with me today that are extremely helpful. And there are other things that I let go and left behind 20 plus years ago because they weren't helpful then and they're not going to be helpful today. So I get it. And one of the things you just mentioned was the ultimate dropping of your 7 and your 24. And I dropped well, you're 7. I don't know if you had a 24, but I did.
I did.
I dropped my 7 and 24 also as well many years ago. Why, you could tell in your voice that you are very passionate about that changeover from the brokerage model to the RIA model. Why are you so passionate about the RIA model?
Yeah. So, from my perspective, very personally, it is the best way to become a business owner, a real business owner in this field, in this industry. Like you really own your business. And, for me, that was the ultimate goal, right? Ever since, I was, like I said, single digits. So for me, it was really driven by this is a way I can build my own business. Then to compare and contrast the two businesses, one is, fee for service, generally speaking, or advice. The other is product oriented. And as I mentioned before, I just don't believe consumers that are looking for advice are best served by being sold. The analogy I've used in the past is like if you were to buy a car, you're not going to buy your tires here and your fender there and your engine here and your transmission there and you're going to try to put it together. That makes no sense, right? For some people, if you're like a real car expert and you love building cars, which people do, then you want to go to a broker to buy your transmission. You want to go to a broker to buy your wheels, but you're putting that thing together. But most advisors are dealing with clients that need advice. And I saw that handwriting on the wall 25 years ago, right? And something I actually mentioned in that investment news piece, when I first got my CFP, which is a quarter century ago, right? Which is a little scary to say.
Mhm.
I was thrilled to be able to sit in front of a prospective client and say, "Hey, I'm a CFP and I'm going to work with you as a fiduciary." Right now, 25 years ago, the response from 9 out of 10 prospects was, "Yeah, well, you got an office, you got a tie, so what? Everyone does." You know, what's the difference? They weren't really connecting the dots for what it meant to be a fiduciary. Now, today, you fast forward a quarter century, I would say easily 1 out of 3 of my prospective clients that come in, they're asking me, "Are you a fiduciary?" And that's real progress, I think, and that's good for the consumers and it's good for those of us in the RIA space.
Imagine a relationship where financial conversations don't feel stressful, but actually bring you joy. We've designed a guide to help you have positive, meaningful money conversations with your partner. This isn't just another budgeting tool, it's a roadmap for building trust and connection. So if you're ready to start a joyful money journey with your partner, go to mitlin.us/couplesjoy and download your free guide. Transform your financial future together starting today. Yeah, I mean, do you think that really is the vision for the future in terms of because we've seen that shift, right? My view is that the RIA is the future of the profession. I think it was a little ahead of its time. Probably you were, I think, a little ahead of your time in the late '90s, right? I think back then it was even still a better model than the brokerage model. It's just taken quite a while for people to catch on, and I feel like it is the future of the profession. Do you feel that as well? And do you feel that it's just going to continue to grow in that direction since you entered in '99?
Yeah, I am quite sure it will. And this is not to say that the broker dealers will go away. The broker dealers play an incredibly important, ethical, valid role to create and deliver products, right? You need that. There also needs to be a place for the do-it-yourselfers, right? If you're a do-it-yourselfer, right, you don't need to pay an advisor if you're competent enough and willing to take the time to do your own financial planning. It's doable, right? It really is. In which case, you want a broker dealer to execute your trades. In that case, you are the advisor, right? And that's why broker dealers will always be around. There's a need for that. But what we're going to see is a clearer delineation between advice and sales, right? So, for example, we just bought a new Yukon, right? SUV. So if I go into the, Yukon, the GMC dealer, I expect to hear all the great things about those GMCs. And I'm expecting him to tell me honest things about those GMCs. Honest. He has to be honest about what he's telling me. But I also don't expect him to tell me how great, the new Audi, crossover is. I don't expect that. But I am expecting at least what he or she is telling me about the product that he or she is pushing is accurate, and that's fine. But if I want my advice, I'm not going to go to a car salesperson. I'm going to learn about the product at these different dealerships, but I'm going to then get an issue of Consumer Reports. In this analogy, that'd be the fiduciary advice that's unbiased. And as people become more aware of this, it's going to be a consumer driven movement that's going to really bring the RIA space up to the next level for giving advice. But this is not to say that's the death of the broker dealer, but they're going to be doing what they should be doing, which is building and selling their products, but not advice, because you can't really mix the two, in my opinion. And I think more and more people are going to be looking for advice, especially as we enter the great wealth transfer, right? What is it, 60, $70 trillion that are going to change hands? Those kids, they're probably in their 30s and 40s right now, are going to need advice on what to do with that money. And those next gen clients, as I tell younger advisors all the time, I promise you, when they have that money, that 60, $70 trillion in another 10, 15 years, I promise you they're not going to be buying an annuity with a 10% commission in it. It's not going to happen because they're going to be
Mhm.
aware that that's not the way to go. But they are going to be looking for advice, and that's going to put those of us in the RIA space in a very good spot.
Yeah, and hopefully they're getting that advice from folks like you and I and firms like ours and not TikTok, because that's a whole
Yes.
nother we could have a whole nother podcast about that, but that's I think
Yes, indeed.
a challenge as well. So let's take a shift for a second to Go RIA. What's the story behind Go RIA? You started this podcast. What is really your why behind putting out that content and creating that show?
Yeah, you bet. So, I really pride myself on being very genuine, right? And I particularly dislike disingenuousness. So I'm not going to tell you I started goRIA to help humanity necessarily. Everything I do, I try to be positive, but there's a reason for this. So I started goRIA.com 3 years ago, completely on my own, right, and our own internal staff here at Sovereign, and not knowing anything about producing webinars or podcasts or anything. It was a huge success. And I can promise you that success was not because of our podcasting production prowess, right? Which is not there even hardly today, I don't think. But there was just such an amount of interest in the broker dealer community to learn about the RIA space that even our, what I like to call kind of our Blair Witch sort of production value, just took off because so many advisors were so curious about the RIA space that we got a lot of eyeballs. So I started that 3 years ago with great success. A year into that, I then approached my friends over at Investment News and say, look, here's the success we're having so far, and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Imagine if we were to partner with you guys, what we could do. So we officially partnered with Investment News 2 years ago, and now it's goRIA fueled by Investment News. So I'm in charge of doing the content and the interviews and finding the guests and all that stuff that I love to do. And then Investment News is leaning in with their distribution and their, vast resources. Now, why did I do this? Well, frankly, it was to educate, with a goal of educating, I should say, tens of thousands of advisors of the benefits of the RIA space, with the hope and, frankly, the expectation that dozens of those advisors would find their way to my firm at Sovereign Financial. And I'll tell you, in the past 3 years, we went from it was just me and a junior partner. We had a really nice, $100 million lifestyle practice, and all was good. This is 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. But since we've started this, and we have educated tens of thousands of advisors, dozens have come to Sovereign. We're now up to almost 20 advisors, and we're scratching $1 billion. And we haven't done any recruiting, but we've had the opportunity to tell the story. And, it's not that I expect 10,000 advisors to join us because they wouldn't be a fit. We're very niche for financial planning oriented advisors with what we've had in what we've built. But we found some really great people, and it's been a great win, right? So tens of thousands of advisors got a lot of, I would like to say, very valid, honest, unbiased education about the RIA space. And we've been able to grow our firm with a team that we're very proud of.
That's amazing, and I love what you're doing. I think that one of the takeaways for me is for those people that are thinking about putting out content, whatever that may be, however that may be, and getting hung up on the production value, making sure that it's movie quality or radio quality. I think to your point, which you emphasize, it's not something that has to be that detailed. If you have good content and you put out good stuff, people are going to watch or people are going to listen, regardless of what that production quality is. So I think that's a good takeaway for advisors, entrepreneurs, anybody out there who may be hesitating in delving into another medium. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
There's a question I want to ask you, especially with the kind of the goal behind the Go RIA and looking for advisors, because one of the things that I found through Mitlin's expansion and speaking with advisors is that there are so many advisors out there who have decades in the business, so they it's not like they're new, they've been around for a while, and they don't know even what an RIA is.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even understand. How do you get compensated if you don't have a seven? That's a question I get. I don't understand. If I drop my seven, how am I going to how my family's going to compensate me? I just don't get it. So, what do you wish advisors knew about the RIA model?
In simplest terms, there's nothing you need a 7 for anymore. Period, full stop. Now, you couldn't say that even 5 years ago. So the industry really has developed even over the past 5 years. But one of my favorite panels that I do when I do these webinars, and we're doing some other events coming up, in person, is a panel that we call fee-based everything, right? Which is designed to say that you don't need a Series 7 to do alternative investments. You don't need a Series 7 to do annuities. You don't need a Series 7 for anything anymore. And that's usually the biggest hump that advisors have. Like, well, how would I do this product? Easy, no problem. How would I do that product? Easy, no problem. And I would even go so far as to say that they are demonstrably better. They're certainly more aligned with how you want to give advice. If you want to give pure advice, it makes that a lot easier to align your compensation with what you're delivering to your clients. But that's what we're hoping people understand, that there just isn't a need for a 7 anymore. There just isn't. And you don't have to be an entrepreneur, right, Larry? As you well know, I love it, right? I love the business side of this business. I really do. Like, it really turns me on. Like, I spend a fair amount of time on weekends and I'm just putzing around with technology. I just happen to
Mhm.
like that. A lot of advisors don't, and that's cool. And here's how I would frame it for those advisors, right? If you wanted to join a wirehouse, you probably have a handful of good choices. If you wanted to join an independent broker dealer, you probably have a dozen really good choices. But if you wanted to join an RIA shop, there's hundreds of really good choices. There's thousands and thousands of them. There's probably hundreds of really good choices. So you could probably find an RIA off the shelf, if you will, to use like a suit analogy. That's going to be 95% of what you probably would have built anyhow if you had the druthers to build, but you could just plug into it.
Mhm.
So you could still have that freedom. You could still have that business model, which is, and I know you agree on this, the business model of the future for financial advice. And you just don't need that seven. And that's what we're really trying to drive that point home on goRIA.com.
Yeah. So let's flip that for 1 second, because we just went over what what you would want advisors to know, right? As to the benefits and the RIA model. What do you wish the average client knew about the RIA model? Now I know they know about it more today than they did probably when you started, definitely clearly in 99. But what do you wish the average client knew about the RIA model, who might have heard about it, thinking about it, doesn't really understand it?
Absolutely. So, in a word, fiduciary. What does that mean? Look it up. Use ChatGPT, use Google, understand what a fiduciary is. And I cannot imagine if a consumer understands the idea of fiduciary care, how they would choose an advisor that's not a fiduciary. Like, how do you choose that, right? So here's someone that has to put my interest first, and here's someone that doesn't. How do you consciously choose the person that's not going to put your interest first? You choose that person because you don't know, right? So understand what it means to be working with a fiduciary versus a non-fiduciary, and then make that choice. And I would go so far as have them put it in writing. Have your advisor, him or her, put in writing that I'm going to work with you as a fiduciary. And also, not just today, but every day, right? Because there's a bunch of, I guess we'll call them hybrids, right? Where I'm a fiduciary today, but not always. I might just switch hats real quick. So, what does that mean? So, Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, I'm a fiduciary, but Tuesday, Thursdays, watch out, anything goes, right? I mean, work with me as a fiduciary always. And now, the other thing I'll say here, because I do talk about this a lot, you can receive commission and still be a fiduciary, but it tests to the fact that you are going to do that. Why did you choose a commission for this product and not that? Because there might be a small percentage of times where there is a commission product, or here's what I'll say. For things like term life insurance, disability insurance, there's really no good fee-based solution for that.
Right.
And you know what? I have zero problem with an advisor that's going to get their clients term life or disability and receive that commission. I choose not to, right? We have partners that will do that for our clients and we don't receive compensation. That's my preference, but I don't think that's a problem as long as it's disclosed. And I feel if you disclose your compensation, even if some of that might be commission, that's okay. I choose to be fee only, right? But I don't want this to be like a holier than thou thing. It is very possible to be a fiduciary and on occasion use commission products because you have to for the few items left in the world that are only commission based, but disclose that to your clients. And again, this next generation of clients that are coming up, they're going to be much more aware of that than they were back in the '90s, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, we are not fee only. We do a small amount of, life insurance, health insurance from years ago. And that, prevents us from saying we're fee only, so we don't. But and quite frankly, it's not that we really enjoy doing the insurance, but a lot of times it's easier than referring it out to somebody who may not be a fiduciary and take advantage of that family. So
Sure.
we still act in a fiduciary capacity and try to secure them the best possible policy we can. And this part of the conversation may roll into my next question a little bit, because you seem to enjoy using acronyms. So I have to ask about this one. You talk about PINOs, which I
Yeah.
believe stands for planners in name only. Can you talk
Mhm.
about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a huge pet peeve of mine, right? And you've been in the business for a long time, and any advisor that has knows that P&Os are for real, planners and name only, and these tend to be the planners out there that do all the financial planning work, create really beautiful, intricate, elaborate written financial plans. But all those plans somehow lead to index universal life, right? Or some other very expensive life insurance product. Now, I know, you know, most advisors listening to this podcast will know that insurance tends to have the highest commission of any financial product out there. So I really have a problem with these planners putting themselves out as planners, going so far as to do a financial plan, but that financial plan inevitably yields to recommending a lot, like a copious amount of whole life insurance or something equally questionable. Does that mean whole life insurance is bad? No. Does it mean insurance is bad? Of course not. But should your plan be dominated with high cost commissionable products? I don't think so. And to address that, and I've actually spoken quite a bit, and this could be a great guest for you too. Knut Rodstead, have you interacted with him at all?
I don't believe I have.
He's a fun guest to have, and a good friend of mine as well. Knut Rodstead, he actually created the, and I might have this exact name wrong, but it's something like the Institute for the Fiduciary Standard, right? And he has like a page that you sign that you're going to be a fiduciary. Now, where Canute and I actually, there's not much daylight between Canute and I, but there is some. I feel you could be a fiduciary and still do commissions as long as you disclose that. He feels, or at least his institute feels, you can. And we're actually talking about that later today, that exact topic, because I like the idea of this fiduciary pledge. But to your point, you're an excellent advisor, obviously. You're a fiduciary, but you do some commission business because you know what? If a client needs term, they need term. Someone's going to get that commission. If you're going to do it in house, fine, keep it. If you choose to outsource this like I do, that's fine. Make sure you have a good person doing it, but disclose the fact that there is a commission there. And I think if you do that, that would eliminate the PINOs. And here's why. If that PINO does what I think that PINO should do, which is sign this fiduciary pledge and say, if I'm going to do a commission product, I'm going to tell you in advance how much I'm going to receive in commissions. Then that consumer sees that pledge and then sees, okay, he or she is recommending this whole life insurance policy, and the commission that he or she is going to receive is $75,000. That consumer might be then motivated to perhaps get a second opinion from someone like you or myself that
Mhm.
doesn't do that. And that gives the consumer a better chance to get some contrast. But if that commission is buried, which it always is, uh, it makes it harder to do because you cannot really effectively regulate ethics, right? That's hard to do. But this
Right.
is something that's very quantifiable. At least give the consumer a chance to see through the Pinot by making them disclose what is the commission they receive. And I don't see the problem in that. But
Sure. Yeah.
a lot of folks in that industry, of course, do. And the question is, well, why do you want to work so hard to keep your commissions a secret? What do you have to hide? And that's the problem I have with Pinots.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I agree. I think there's a tendency for them to use, like, for example, insurance or even other products, right, as the Swiss Army knife. Solves all problems and or all
Absolutely.
challenges, and nothing does that. It's really designing a plan and putting different mechanisms in place that address the different challenges of a financial plan. It's not a one hit wonder, so to speak. So,
That's right.
one of the things you talk about is educational marketing, right? And I think that's really the impetus behind goRIA. You're educating advisors on the RIA model. Why do you think that is so powerful?
Because it's genuine, right? So, and I think a lot of people miss this. You have, and I believe this for everything I do in life in general, but certainly when it comes to business, is you need to be prepared to first deliver value if you want to receive value and be patient. You might need to deliver a lot of value for a long time before you see that value come back. I know you've been doing this for a long time, and I suspect the success that you have now, which is fantastic, is probably greater than the success you had your first month doing this, is my guess, of course, right? So a lot of people, it's like when I try to lose a few pounds, like, man, I've been dieting for 2 days now. This is not working. It's not how it works, right? You have to commit to the process. And that's something I've always been very comfortable doing. And so, if you want to get value, the best way is to deliver value. And I think educational marketing is one of the best ways to do it, especially if you're giving real, honest, genuine content. People are interested in that. And it doesn't mean that of the tens of thousands of people we've reached with goRIA, they're all going to somehow do business with me personally, but enough will to make it worthwhile, right? So when I started building my practice, and just to be sure we're correct here, in 1999, I did not go RIA. That's when I went IBD. I went RIA in 2019, so exactly 20 years later. So it was like kind of RIA light, right? I was under someone else's RIA for the first 20 years, but acting basically as an RIA. But when I built my business, because remember, when I went from the Wolf of Wall Street scenario, right? Selling individual stocks, not one client came with me. I started from scratch. And what I did back then was the good old fashioned seminars. And we would send out tens of thousands of postcards. Not everyone attended the seminar. Then we had 40, 50 people coming to the seminars. Not everyone wanted an appointment. Then 5 or 6 people wanted an appointment. Not everyone wanted to become a client, but two did. And rinse and repeat. So it's a matter of delivering that value. I will say, I was looking at some of these old presentations that I did. It was good stuff, right? I was delivering a lot of really good information to the people that attended. And of the hundreds and hundreds of people that attended, you know, 5% became clients, 95% went away with a lot of good free information and some good wine and a snack. You're welcome. That's fine, right? You don't have to worry about squeezing every last piece of revenue out of everyone you touch. But if you
Right.
touch enough people with a good message, they're going to be like, hey, this person knows what they're talking about. And if you do it consistently, you'll get the results.
That numbers game really resonated from Wolves of Wall Street days. It sounds like because it was very, very similar to that. So, Chuck,
Yes.
it's been a pleasure having you on, and we ask each of our guests the same final question because we've touched on it along the way. We are all about joy on the Mitlin Money Mindset, and that is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
Well, you know what? It started with planning. So I had a pretty full morning. So this is early on in a Monday morning, and I've already done this is my second podcast, and I've already done a client meeting. So to prep for this, I did what I like to say. I was being kind to tomorrow, Chuck. So last night, thinking I had a very busy schedule this morning, I wanted to be very kind to Monday morning, Chuck. So what I did last night was I completely prepared my coffee maker, so that way I could just press a button and get my coffee right away. And that coffee brought me a great deal of joy this morning, and
There you
certainly put me
go.
in the right mindset to do this and everything else. And I've had an absolute blast. I really enjoyed being on the show here, Larry.
Awesome. Awesome. It's been great having you. And listen, we're going to have all your information in the show notes, but if people want to learn more about you, Chuck, or more about the, Go RIA or Sovereign Financial Group, what's the easiest and the best way for them to do that?
Sure. I mean, one thing nice about having a relatively uncommon last name, Failla, if you just Google Chuck Failla, Failla, I am right up there as far as the most famous Chuck Faillas in the world, of which there's probably only three of us. But you can
Public
go to our
enemy number
website,
one.
Public Enemy number one, or more easily, you can go to goRIA.com or just find me on LinkedIn. I love talking with advisors. Find me on LinkedIn, hook up, and would love to chat.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking out the time, Chuck, and I know that we're going to be doing this again for Go RIA in the coming week. So I'm looking forward to that, and thank you for that opportunity to share my story and some of my insights with your listeners. I'm very much looking forward to that, and I appreciate your time today, and enjoy the day.
All right. Thank you, Larry. Looking forward to having you on goRIA coming up soon.
I want to thank Chuck Failla for being a guest on the Mitlin Money Mindset. Chuck had a similar start to mine within the financial services profession, and thankfully, neither of us let it deter us away from this great profession. The RIA route took me several years to understand and eventually move towards. A podcast like Go RIA would have been very helpful to me, and now it is impacting countless numbers of advisors to find their way within the profession. The RIA path is certainly the best way for any aspiring advisor to pursue. Chuck Failla and the goRIA podcast can be found across most social media platforms. All the contact information needed to find them can be found in the show notes.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Mitlin Money Mindset. Remember, it's not just about the money, it's finding joy in the journey and embracing the right mindset. If you love the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Don't forget to follow along for more tips and inspiration. Please visit the social links below to connect with Larry or his guests. Until next time, keep smiling, keep thriving, and remember to think about, what did you do today that brought you joy?
The opinions voiced in the Mitlin Money Mindset Show with Lawrence Sprung are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy ensures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Guests on the Mitlin Money Mindset Show are not affiliated with CWM LLC.